My name is Matthew Gaston. I took a foraging level 10 profession as a botanist, and so I'm trying to get the iridium quality forageables. I want to be able to get the best stuff. There's conveniently a character in the game that looks similar to me, so I can use that as my profile picture. Stardew Valley is really fun. It's a game that came out in 2016 that's a farming simulator, maybe RPG, depending on how you do it. It came out in February 2016 by Eric Baroni, also known as Concerned Ape. The game is kind of based on, Harvest Moon, and it has 4 seasons in it. The game is one of the best-selling games of all time, up there with, like, Mario Kart and Animal Crossing and Pokemon. Call of Duty, even. The game has sold as many copies as the Call of Duty games, for reference. And it was made by one person. The music, the art, everything. Really incredible. This is one of the few games where I actually learned something about myself. The game taught me about energy. This sounds crazy, actually, to some people, but I didn't realize until playing this game, a couple years, I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, that there's a finite amount of energy everyone has throughout the day. And in Stardew Valley, there's a bar that represents this energy. Now, I learned a lot about that. And so I would be drinking coffee all day, running around, staying up late. And I would think I'd have a lot of energy. But then turns out, at 2 a.m., you'll drop to your knees and pass out. Just like real life, in certain exhaustion. And so Stardew Valley allows us to understand the world in new ways, potentially. Botanically, in the relation to farming, maybe in the relation to socializing. For me, it was very useful for understanding, finite energy. You lay in the bed in multiplayer and your energy bar goes up. You eat some things, your energy goes up. If I didn't eat lunch, I probably wouldn't have a lot of energy today. And so, Stardew Valley is one of these games that has a lot of really fascinating components in it. Particularly the botanical life. There are so many plants in the game. There is a very rich and vibrant botanical world of Stardew Valley. And so we're going to dive into it today, and hopefully, just as I learned something about finite energy throughout the day, we might learn a thing or two about the plants in the world around us through Stardew Valley. But first, we'll look at the season. So Stardew Valley is a game based on seasonality. The game takes place in Stardew Valley, which has a little town called Pelican Town, and you're a farmer who takes over the farm of his grandfather, leaving your corporate job to then take on a country life. There are 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter. And each season is about 4 weeks of 7 days. It's not about, it's precisely. So each season is 28 days. There are other zones, like the Calico Desert and Ginger Island, which both don't have seasons. Neither of these are noted for having seasons. And we might understand this based on our own world around us. Stardew Valley might be somewhere in New York or Oregon, where there are 4 seasons in the mid-latitudes. But then as you go down to the tropics, maybe in Africa and the deserts, you might not see distinct seasonality, maybe 2 seasons, wet and dry. And then, Ginger Island doesn't really have seasons in the game, and that might be some kind of tropical island, along the equator. In the mid-latitudes, there are certain areas where you do have only 2 seasons, like California and Turkey and, Portugal. There's wet and dry, but most of the time there's 4 distinct seasons. Okay, so let's look at the plants. There are so many. We have crops, forageables, and trees. So the first group are the crops. Now we have 4 distinct seasons, so we'll talk about each season. The first season are the spring crops, and there's 13 of those. There's summer crops, and there's 15. Now, this one here is coffee, and it can be grown in either of these seasons, so there's a little Venn diagram. There's fall, which is 14, with 3 that overlap. Winter, which is 1, recently added. And then there's 8 special crops. These are crops that, they might have a distinct season, but their circumstances are a little atypical. Now, if we look at the forageables, there's a kind of similar pattern, actually. It's pretty similar in that there are seasonality to them. So 6 spring, 4 summer, 3 fall, 5 winter, 2 that you can get from fishing, I'm including these as forageables, and then 4 kind of special case scenario forageables. And then we look at the trees. There are 8 trees that give you wood, and then there are 8 fruit trees. This is a pretty big. I didn't realize that there were this many types of trees in the game, but when you put them all together, it makes sense. Okay, this is the craziest statistic, in my opinion, about this. Stardew Valley has an immense amount of botanical diversity, and you can break it down and look at it in different ways. When we look at plant taxonomy, we can break it down by kingdom at the very top, so the kingdom of plants, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, understanding the family reveals common characteristics, so we're going to be looking at the families today. If you understand the family, you understand growth patterns, nutrient needs, susceptibility to pests, and they often have really similar flower structure. And so, in Stardew Valley, there are 41 botanical families, which is crazy. And that doesn't include the fantastical crops that aren't distinguishable necessarily. Let's dive into this diversity in Stardew Valley. We're going to go through the families. There are 41. The first one, Amarantaceae. The format for each of these is going to have the scientific name, the family name, and it's going to end in ACA. I put pronunciation here just so that everyone can, practice and follow along. Amarantaceae or Amarantaceae. There's very distinct botanical descriptions for each family, and I'll put these in these maroon boxes. So the Amarantaceae have small, inconspicuous flowers, so they're really tiny, you can't really notice them, and they have reduced perianth of 1 to 5 tepals, and they appear on a spike or a panicle or a head, and they have a thing called a superior ovary. So this is a ton of botanical jargon, but we'll be going through and seeing the important bits of each. So the amaranth in the Amarantaceae of the amaranth family also includes beets. Beets and amaranth are closely related. Now, one of the things, they have small, inconspicuous flowers that appear on these spikes, or panicles, and each of these little tiny things there is one flower. Amaranth is an interesting one because it is an important crop, but it's also a major weed. They produce a ton of seeds, and when you produce a ton of seeds, you can also become very weedy. A lot of our crops are called cereal crops because they're derived from grasses of cereals. But there's some really important ones like amaranth and quinoa. Quinoa is not related, but amaranth is called a pseudo-cereal because we kind of eat it the same way we would a grass or a cereal crop. You can see there's pictures here of some that are really important, like culinarily, and then this one on the right is called spiny amaranth. If you live in a tropical region, this is a super invasive number one invasive tropical weed. Spiny amaranth makes a ton of seeds, super resilient and robust. Okay, family 2, Amaryllidaceae, or Amaryllidaceae, the amaryllis family. They're herbaceous, bulbous perennials with an umbel-shaped inflorescence atop a scape with a superior ovary. There are a few of these in the game, actually. A lot of them you might know as alliums. So spring onion, leek, garlic, blue jazz, I would argue is actually a type of onion like this one here. This allium has this blue flower. Now this is the inflorescence, which is a stem of flowers, and it's on a scape, which is this a specialized stem that comes from the underground bulbous tissue. And it's described as an umbel. An umbel is just an inflorescent shape, but it's beautiful. So I think blue jazz would be kind of adjacent to this, or if not this. Yeah. They're bulbous, so a lot of them, they have the deep tubery kind of thing. So spring onion, you can see it there, and garlic, you can see it. Another thing about the Amaryllidaceae is that they're going to have umbels as their flowers, shapes, or inflorescence. So this little blue diagram is a picture demonstrating or showing all the different primary shapes of flower arrangement. Each of these little red circles is one flower. And so you can see there's a thing called a raceme, a spike where they're all just kind of, on one stick with these little leaves and little flowers are there, a catkin, But the one that onions and the amaryllidaceae are umbels. This also reminds me of Wales. I don't know if we have any Welsh folks here, but leek is a national symbol of Wales. And then daffodils are the national flower of Wales. And so, like, in 500 AD, one of the kings of Wales identified to all the soldiers, hey, you should wear leeks so we know that you're on our side. So, whenever I think of the amaryllidaceae, I think of Wales. This is the Welsh flag. Okay, the anacardiaceae. Anacardiaceae, or ACE. These are resinous trees or shrubs that have canals for moving resin called erichiol. They bear little flowers that have 5 petals, 5 sepals, 10 stamens, and they have a superior ovary. This is the mango tree. Has anyone picked a mango before? If you pick a mango, there's a very distinct thing you have to be super cautious of. Mangoes, like pretty much everything in this family, has a sap that will like burn your skin. So when you pick them, you got to be careful because they'll ooze this sap that can cause a little burn. So you can see this person has pulled them off, and they rip the mango off in a certain way so that it doesn't get shot at them. This sap. You might know the family. It's called the Cashew family. And the compound erichiol is found throughout them. So if I eat mangoes and the skin touches my lips, then I'll get like a rash. And I'm really sensitive to this. Cashews, mangoes. Guess what else is in the family? Poison ivy, poison oak, and poison sumac. So we know these 3 as being really, annoying because of the erichiol. Mango is the same. Mango will get you. So if you're ever picking mangoes, make sure you know how to do it right. Apiaceae, the carrot family. So carrots are really easy to identify in my opinion. So anything in the carrot family. In the game you have parsnips, carrot, cave carrot. The ones we know of have these deep tap roots, and we've bred them to have deep tap roots. But they have pinnately compound leaves with sheathing leaf bases and a very distinct flower structure. That's a compound umbel. And so when we looked at the onions, we saw that they had umbels. Well, this is like an onion flower, but it just kind of continues onwards. This is a wild carrot inflorescence. So if you see a wild carrot, this is the flower. It's quite pretty. In the middle, there's this kind of reddish thing that is also a flower. We don't know why that's there, but it might be an evolutionary vestige. Each of these little tiny things is one flower. They have hollow stems. This is a wild parsnip here. Unbelievable, that's right. Yeah. So when we look at the inflorescence shape, it is an umbel, but it's very specifically a compound umbel. So you can see that it is like a bunch of these umbels connected to each other with a bunch of tiny little flowers. I personally hate the smell of Apiaceae. They have a very distinct smell. If you ever find one in the wild and you like crush the leaves and smell it, it just smells like grassy carrots. Some of them are really toxic too. I personally am not a big fan of Apiaceae, but they have charm to them. Okay, the holly family. Aquifoliaceae. Holly. So, of the genus Ilex. They have alternate simple leaves that are evergreen. They have little tooths sometimes on the margin. They might be a little spiny on the edge of the leaf. They're radially symmetrical, fruits and flowers. And they're dioecious. Dioecious, that's our word for this family. They have flowers that are unisexual. So when they're dioecious, the one on the left here is what we might call a pistillate flower. Traditionally people would say female. It's a female flower because it has the egg, but I think pistillate is an appropriate word because it has the pistils in it. Staminate flowers have stamens, and traditionally they're called male flowers, but staminate might be more appropriate to reduce anthropomorphization of plants. And so these two are kind of, separated. The flowers are unisexual, so they only have one. Each flower only has either stamen or pistil. So they're dioecious. The hollies, yeah. I love how when you eat these in the game, you get poisoned. Eraceae. Okay. A lot of people probably have Eraceae as houseplants. in the chat. Let me know if you do. And if you have seen the structure that we're about to see here. One of the most easily definable characteristics of this family, the Arum family, is that they have a thing called a spathe and a spadix. So on Ginger Island, you can get taro, and you eat the kind of tuber. But the Araceae have a thing called a spathe, and they have a spadix. A spathe is this kind of big leaf, and the spadix is this little stick. This weird-looking stick. This is the flower of taro. I don't think many people see the flower of taro, but you might have seen the flower of anthurium, the peacock plant. Well, it also has a spadix and a spathe. The spadix is a large, sheathing, colorful leaf that surrounds a spadix, which is an inflorescence. So it's a stem of flowers where there's numerous tiny flowers densely clustered on a fleshy, elongated axis. Araceae owner, look at that. Yeah. If you have peace lily might be the most common Araceae family. Yes, calla lilies. Yep, another good one. Really, really prominent spathe with a lot of colors. If you're in Hawaii, you probably are very, very, very well acquainted with taro because it is a primary carbohydrate source. And each part of the taro has a different name. And so there's like this underground section is the corum. This is the stem. And then the leaves come out of the stem here. You can have little buds coming off and you can break those off. But yeah, if you grow them big enough, they'll make flowers. Okay, this is the palm family. Ericaceae. Ericaceae. They are lignified plants with unbranched trunks most of the time. They have big evergreen leaves that are typically pleated or compound in a pinnate or palmate arrangement with a distinctive inflorescence or spike of flowers that then produces these drupaceous fruits. So in the desert and Ginger Island, you can get coconuts, and they have different sprites for the different palm trees. Coconuts you would probably find in a tropical place, so if the desert's tropical, then you would have coconuts potentially growing in really wet areas that's sufficiently humid. But on Ginger Island, it makes a lot of sense. The coconuts come off of these panicles. These are full of flowers, and then the flowers become fruits. And you can see they're really densely clustered on this. One of the distinct things is that the inflorescence is a panicle. So it is a stem that branches, then branches again, and then has flower at the end of those branches. It's kind of hard to see on coconut, but with dates, with another palm, you can see this a little more easily. You can see it branches off, and then it produces these little branches with the flowers on the end that become the fruits. So if you've ever eaten dates or coconuts, then you've eaten a palm fruit. Okay, this is the summer spangle. This is kind of a fantastical plant in Stardew Valley that doesn't necessarily align with anything in a real world, but I think it reminded me a lot of a daylily of the genus Hemerocallis. And daylilies are in the Asphodel. This is a fun one. Asphodelaceae. The Asphodelaceae. These are perennial herbs. The aloe is part of it, so sometimes they have succulent leaves, but they're arranged in a little rosette. It will have 6 tepals. So it's like a strange petal kind of combination with 6 stamens and an ovary that sits on top that becomes a little capsule. A capsule is a dry fruit that splits open and the seeds come out. And so summer spangle, in the sprite it has looks like 4 petals, but there are some cultivated varieties of daylily that do seem familiar. I enjoy daylilies a lot. I think they're sometimes overplanted. Oh well. Asteraceae! The Asteraceae, the sunflower family. This is one of the, if not the biggest botanical family in the world. Hold on, give me a sec. I'll be right back. The Asteraceae, great family. Actually, I didn't care for them a lot until recently. Asteraceae, the sunflower family. In Stardew Valley, there's dandelions, sunflowers, and artichokes. Artichokes are a type of thistle in the Asteraceae. They're pretty easy to identify because they're going to have a compound or composite inflorescence called a capitula, or a head, and then on that head there's a bunch of tiny little flowers called florets. And then they're surrounded by a thing called an involucre of bracts, and then they're going to turn into these little tiny single-seeded fruits called Cypsela. So it's a huge family with a ton of them, and a lot of them are yellow. And so this little thing here is one flower. I've highlighted it in the red circle, I guess oval. It has 5 petals, and the petals are kind of fused. Do you see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 petals fused, and then these are the reproductive bits here, right? And so all of these are tightly packed onto this capitula, this head. You can see this is the kind of arrangement. Each of these little red circles is one flower. And so just make this really big, and it keeps going. And then when they become fruits, they become a Cypsela. Some of them have tissue that allows them to float in the wind. So dandelions, you see this a lot. The dandelions will have a little fruit that's attached, and you can see each of these florets becomes one fruit. Now there's this whole thing on the back side of the sunflower. Have you ever done this? You ever turned it around to see it? Well, this whole thing here is the involucre. It's a whorl of bracts that subtend the inflorescence. To subtend is a fancy way to say it surrounds. So there's a bunch of little specialized leaves at the base of the head. That's what this is. And each of those little bracts is called a phyllory. And that word is very specific to the Asteraceae. So in the sunflower family, each of these little things on the whorl of bracts is called a phyllory. Isn't that interesting? And people might say, wow, how is artichoke, a sunflower family member? Well, guess what? The artichoke is the involucre. This whole thing is the whorl of bracts.
Chasing sunshine just like a sunflower. Smiley face emoji.
Thank you, Kelp. Thanks for subscribing. The artichoke is a bud that's still growing, and when it opens up, you can see it quite clearly. This is just like a sunflower, except it's like purple, and the involucre, these whorl of bracts, is really prominent. I mean, typically we eat them, when they're not blooming, but yeah, artichokes. Fascinating, huh? The Betulaceae, the birch family. Betulaceae. They are deciduous, monoecious trees or shrubs with simple serrated leaves bearing pendulous male catkins. So this is the pendulous male catkin here with staminate flowers. And then they have these cone-like female flowers or pistillate flowers. And they make a small winged fruit or unwinged seed. So there is a plant called hazel, and the fruit of hazel is called the hazelnut. This whole family, Betulaceae, this is a fun word to say. Say that 12 times. Betulaceae. Betulaceae. I bet Betulaceae can't say it 12 times fast. They're monoecious, so they have flowers that are either pistillate or staminate, but they're going to be on the same plant. They'll lose their leaves. Here on the right, you can see they look kind of like cones. They look like the pine cone or something, but these are just flower structures called catkins. Oh, flower review. We're going to make sure we remember our details about flowers. The flowers, well, a flower is made of 4 structures called whorls. The 4 whorls of the flower are the sepals, which is often leafy and green and protective. Then you have petals, which are showy. And then you have the stamens, which produce pollen and then sperm. And then you have the pistil, which produces egg, has the ovary. And those are the 4. Pretty easy, right? And then these are the parts that I always get tripped up on. So we have plants that might be, on the left, plants with hermaphroditic flowers. So a plant might have flowers that has both the pistil and the stamens. We might have monoecious plants where it has a flower that's only stamens and a flower that's only pistils. And we have a thing called dioecious. Monoecious means one house. That's why they made this little box to look like a house. So this plant has both of them in one house. And then dioecious means 2 houses. Dioecious plants are either 100% pistillate reproductive bits with egg or 100% pollen and stamen bits. So We looked at the Betulaceae, they're monoecious, so they have this structure. Okay, Brassicaceae. Let's take this off. The Brassicaceae. The Brassicaceae. This is a huge family. This is one of the most significant like vegetable families. You've probably eaten these: cauliflower, kale, broccoli, red cabbage, radish, bok choy, horseradish. The Brassicaceae are pretty easy to identify because they have 4 petals shaped like a cross, and they have 6 stamens with 4 long ones and 2 short ones. And that's what you need to know. They have a fruit that's called a salique. But if you look at this flower here, this is like a standard mustard flower. It has 4 petals, and then each of these little things is a stamen. There's 4 long ones and then 2 short ones on the side. You see that? In the middle is a pistil. There are not a ton of families of plants that have 4 petals, so it's a special occasion. Now, if you look at your wild mustard plant, we have been breeding and cultivating this thing for a long time. We've been growing it in a lot of ways, and we've been selecting for specific traits. If you select for leaves, then you get kale. So if you grow this plant and just keep breeding it for big leaves, you get kale. If you keep breeding it for terminal buds, you get cabbage. If you keep breeding this for the inflorescence or the stem of flowers, you get cauliflower. If you select for the stem and the inflorescence, you get broccoli. And then if you just want a thick stem, you get kohlrabi. So these are all the same species. We've just cultivated them and bred them to be very specifically one structure that's been emphasized. Very tasty. Yeah. Bromeliaceae, the bromeliad family. You like a bromeliad? There's only really one bromeliad that's, agriculturally important, and that's the pineapple. In the photo on the right, you can see a field of pineapples. These are plants that have a rosette structure. Often they live on trees, but with pineapple, it's terrestrial, lives in the ground. The leaves are rosette, and sometimes they have little trichomes to help absorb the water. And they produce berries. And in the case of pineapple, the berries kind of fuse together and become this multiple fruit. Pineapple. Interesting thing. They've bred us. We've been cultivated by pineapple. My favorite family, the Cactaceae. So the Cactaceae. This family is defined easily by one thing called an aerial. This little photo here points to this thing here where the spines come out. That's called an aerial. It's a specialized modified branch where the spines, the flowers, and the new branches come out. Now, if a plant has an aerial, then it's a cactus. The full description is that often they're succulent, xerophytic plants that always have some type of spine, and they come from a structure called an aerial. And then they have big flowers often that have a lot of tepals, so a strange modified version of a petal. Here you can see the diversity of morphological shapes of cacti. But what if I showed you this? I said, look at this. This is a crazy cactus, isn't it? And then you would say, oh, that's no cactus. You're pulling my leg. And I would say, oh, we'll get real close to it and look at it. And you'll see the trunk looks like this. The trunk has spines originating at an aerial. And you would say, that's crazy. How do I never seen this cactus before? Well, there are cacti beyond, our standard observation. There's the aerial. Now, when we look at the taxonomy of things, a long time ago, people created this hierarchy, but sometimes we need categories between these. So we said, well, let's make subfamily and subgenus and subspecies, and we need more categories because some groups of plants need them, like cactus. So let's look at subfamilies of Cactaceae. Depending on who you talk to, there's either 4 or 7, but it's better to simplify for the sake of learning. So there's 4 in this instance. There's the subfamily called Mahunioideae, which are these little tiny mat-forming cacti. There's only a few species, maybe 2. They live in mountains and they're kind of tiny and ground covery. The next group is the Priscioideae. These are those ones that have leaves that become big trees. Sometimes they produce fruits people call gooseberry, but these have fleshy leaves. but they do have spines. Then you have the Opuntioideae. These are the pad cactus. Your prickly pear. Often, if it has segments, it might be an Opuntioideae. And these are the subfamily that has glaucids, those tiny little spines that get on you and they annoy you. No fun. People tend to not enjoy Opuntioideae. And the most common one is the columnar and barrel cacti, the Cactoideae. There's my favorite little plant, the Ferrocactus. But the Stardew Valley plant is likely a Cactoideae. There you go. The thing is that we collect the fruit of the plant in Stardew Valley, but it looks like a whole barrel, which is interesting. Cannabaceae. Many people might be well acquainted with this if they enjoy beer or relaxing. These plants are often erect or climbing herbs that have palmately lobed compound leaves, like a little hand, like a palm, and tiny little dioecious flowers. So the plant is either going to be male or female. This is true for pretty much everything in the Cannabaceae, including hops, my favorite Stardew Valley crop. This is indeed my favorite, yeah. A good one. I love to get kegs, kegs in Stardew Valley in my little hop house. I make a hop building. I put pots in the back with hops just for the aesthetic. But they have dioecious flowers. And so here's the pistillate ones, and then those things sticking out of the pistils. Once they're fertilized, they become what people call the hop cone. Now this thing isn't truly a cone. These are just little bracts. These are specialized leaves that come out on the hop root structure. It's an infructescence, but we call it a cone because no need to be pedantic. Actually, this whole presentation is kind of pedantic. But these are the staminate flowers. These are the ones that produce pollen. Yeah, the hemp family, Cannabaceae. This one, okay. I've included the seaweed and green algae into this presentation because they are plants by the definition of green plants. They are the kind of ancestral group. Green algae evolved into land plants. Brown algae and red algae, brown algae includes kelp, those are not plants, but green algae are plants. This is the Caulerpaceae family, also called the Calyptera family. They're green algae characterized by the lack of cross walls. So they do not have cell walls. Then they have a bunch of other interesting features. But you can see here, look at this thing. This one plant is one cell. They only have one cell with many nuclei, making them among the biggest cells in the world. So this whole thing is one cell. And there's a bunch of different, morphological features in this family. This one, I like this one because it's called Cactoides. If it ends in oid, it means something like. So Cactoides means something like a cactus. Someone saw this seaweed and said, this looks like a cactus. But yeah, crazy in that they're lacking cross walls. They're some among the biggest cells in the world. Convolvaceae. This one I always have a hard time saying. Convolvulaceae. There we go. Convolvulaceae. The morning glory family. Now, in Stardew, we have the yam. It might properly be called a sweet potato. But these are like herbaceous, woody plants that often twine. They might be kind of vining. They have these really showy flowers that have 5 petals that are radially symmetrical, all the petals are morphed together, and they make a little dry fruit that opens up called a capsule, the hissant capsular fruit. So I would recommend that we call this a sweet potato instead of a yam because yams are in a different family. But the sprite and everything about it seems to describe a regular sweet potato. But there's a lot of jargon in this description, but basically everything in the morning glory family is going to have radially symmetrical flowers with 5 fused petals forming a funnel. That's a distinct component. If you look at anything in this family, now these are the flowers of sweet potato, you could look at any morning glory, and they're going to have 5 fused petals making a funnel. Really, really beautiful flowers. I like to see bees crawling in because they just get all cozy. Because they can't fall out, It's safe in there. Cucurbitaceae, the melon family. There's 4 melons you can get in Stardew. The melon, the summer squash, the pumpkin, and the powder melon. These are herbaceous vines that have tendrils. They have these kind of palmately lobed leaves, and then the flowers are unisexual. And so the flower will be like staminate or pistillate. And they have a very distinctive fleshy fruit. The fleshy fruit is called a peepo. It has a hard, thick outer rind, and then a fleshy middle layer. Big win for the cucurbits, yeah. They have a distinct smell too. If you crush the leaves, the cucurbits smell very distinctly. You can see the flower here. This one is nice and yellow. The fruits, these are pumpkins. Let's see. There are some crops in Stardew that can become really big. Of the ones that you can grow really big, pumpkin is the only one that's truly reasonable, in my opinion. And how do you do this? How do you get a big pumpkin fruit? Does anyone want to share how you would get this giant pumpkin? Because it is completely doable. You can see people have done it. This person has spent their entire yard. Kiss it every night. Okay, Ethan, good guess. Plant 3x3, great. Get a gene gun, okay. Witchcraft, fair. These are all fair guesses. The way you get a really big pumpkin is you make sure that there's only one pumpkin and no other pumpkins. The way you do it is when you see another flower forming, remove the flower so that there's only one sink. So this is an example of something called a source-sink relationship. If you study plant physiology and growth and development, you'll know that the plant is always moving sugar. The plant is creating sugar using the light of the sun, and then it puts the sugar somewhere where it's growing. If you remove all the options for sugars to go, except for one fruit, then it's just going to get really big until it reaches some kind of physical limit. Now, if you had 2 pumpkins, this would potentially be half the size. So if you want a really big pumpkin, make a lot of leaves, so you can get a lot of energy collecting, surface area, and only one sink. So there's the source of energy, which is the leaves, and the sink is the fruit. Sometimes the root is the fruit, sometimes the meristem is... the root is the sink, sometimes the meristem is the sink. It depends. The summer squash, if you read the description in Stardew Valley, and a lot of them are really good, the summer squash says, it is a yellow curved squash that's harvested while immature and still tender. It's immature. That's a key part of what a summer squash is. It's not physiologically mature, so it doesn't have robust seeds. And you've probably eaten summer squash. There's straight neck squash, which is probably, the one that's modeled in the game. Also zucchini. Zucchini is harvested before it is physiologically mature, so it's immature. So these summer squashes like zucchini and straight neck squash, and these all make sense. And it makes sense too because you keep pulling them off the plant. In Stardew, you have the plant there, and every 6 days or something, you get another fruit. You don't have to wait as long as you do with the melon. Oh, the Ericaceae. This one is fun. The heather family. Ericaceae is known for being quite morphologically diverse. But the genus Vaccinium is a really notable genus in it because it contains blueberries, it contains cranberries. Now these are woody shrubs or small trees that are often evergreen, and they have little urn-shaped flowers. An urn, like like a vase. So these are defined as urn-shaped flowers. The stamens often they have a cap, and then they kind of explode off the top. And they have a superior ovary often, and they make a little berry or a capsule. Here is a cross-section of a blueberry flower. You can see that this is the fused corolla that forms an urn, like a little vase, but it has an inferior ovary. So Ericaceae is kind of fascinating in that it's quite morphologically diverse. But if you see these types of flowers that look like little urns with all the petals fused, then that's probably an ericaceous plant. Now, when we're looking at the ovaries, I wanted to remind everyone that there's 3 ways the ovary can be present on the flower. The ovary can be on top of all the other structures, so it's called superior or hypogynous. It can be kind of halfway through, so half inferior or perigynous. Or it could be completely embedded in this tissue, and it might be called an inferior ovary or epigynous. And so when we look at the vaccinium, it is an inferior ovary because it's completely embedded in here. These are the ovules. They look like little lamps. Yes, they do. I think it's a good way to remember it. They look like little lamps. Oh, these would be cute. If someone wants to 3D print some blueberry flower lamps, that would be great. This species, Vaccinium mycinites, myricinites, it's always fun to say words. This is called the shiny blueberry. But yeah. Oh, the bean family. These little guys. These guys always get me. There's so many of them, and a lot of them are pretty significant agriculturally. The Fabaceae, or Fabaceae, the bean family, they often have, they have a legume as a fruit, like a little bean pod, and a lot of them have a flower that's described as papilionaceous, meaning like butterfly-like. So this picture here, these are papilionaceous flowers. And so if you see something that looks like this, it's going to be a bean. It's going to be in the bean family. Butterfly in the sky. I can go twice as high. Take a look at the Fabioideae, the subfamily that has these flowers. They have a wing, a keel. They have a very descript series of names for each of the structures, and they often have root nodules to facilitate nitrogen fixation. The thing that's tricky, though, is that in the Fabaceae, there's other subfamilies with different flower morphologies. This one doesn't have like a distinct name, but I call it the Caesalpinia type. The Caesalpinia type flower. Kind of looks like an orchid, if you know orchid trees or Caesalpinia. This is a different subfamily. And then the mimosa type. If you know the lead tree or the genus Mimosa, it's a bunch of stamens and it looks like a little puffball. This is another type of bean. Now the thing they all have in common is they all produce a legume. So this fruit that dries out and splits open, the seeds fall out. That's what they have in common. And they might be able to fix nitrogen. Okay, Fagaceae, the beech family. Fagaceae is named after the genus Fagus, which is beech. Now one of the things that's really notable about the beeches, which includes oak, one of the key trees in Stardew Valley, is that they always have a little cupule. The fruit has this thing called the cupule on it. The trees are monoecious, they have alternate leaves, the male flowers are on little catkins, and they have a nut with a cupule. So that's how you know that. This one, you can see the cupule fully encloses. This is the beech nut. Oh wow, I realized my family lives on a street called Beech Nut. Anyway, connections. But you can see with the beech nut, the cupule covers the whole thing. On acorn, it covers, some small portion of it. The Fagaceae. The iris family, Iridaceae, has crocus. So the crocus is a forageable in Stardew Valley, but it is often cultivated for saffron. If you ever had saffron, it is the pistil, or like female reproductive part of Crocus sativus that gives you saffron. So in the picture on the right here, these yellow things are the stamen, the male part, and then these are the parts you pull off and sell for $50 each. Those are the saffron. Now these are all family. Everything in this family has like a rhizome, a corm, or a bulb, and then they're going to have 3 petals and 3 sepals, but they kind of all just look the same, so we call them tepals. So there's 6 tepals, 3 stamens, and 3 of the stigma. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, in this picture here, you can see there's the bulb, little crocus. That's why crocus sells for so much, yeah. You want to collect the floral bits. Lauraceae. I pushed a little boundary here. Spiceberry is the forageable you find. There are plants called spiceberry, and it seemed to fit a lot of the description, so I've included this one here. The Lauraceae. The laurel family. everything in this family is kind of aromatic. The shrubs, the trees or shrubs, they have evergreen leaves, and they always have little tiny yellow flowers as a superior ovary that sticks out. And then the fruit is a little tiny berry or drupe. And so the spiceberry is presumably in the Lauraceae, if it's like a spicy little fruit, little berry or drupe. And this plant is called spiceberry, Lindera benzoin. Liliaceae, the lily family, includes tulips. These are bulbous plants with very showy, radially symmetrical flowers. Typically they have 3 sepals and 3 petals, and 6 stamens, and then a superior ovary. And they turn into a little capsular fruit that pops open. You can see in this photo here, this is like a beautiful specimen of a tulip here in the middle. It has these 3 sepals, and then on top of that, the next whorl, 3 petals. You can see there's 6 stamens, and then this little thing here is a superior ovary. The ovary that's sticking out at the top of everything else. Tulipa, that's the genus of tulips. Okay, these are the pomegranates. The pomegranate was recently, I guess, relatively recently reclassified into this new family, Lythraceae. The loosestrife family, as people might call it. This family is a little unusual to me. I don't encounter these plants frequently, but they have opposite or whorled leaves, and they have these like strange flowers. The flowers have a structure that is a hypanthium. So I put this diagram here because it illustrates kind of the unusual nature of this. This red thing is the ovary, which becomes like the primary piece of the fruit. But there's this tissue that comes up that connects the sepals, the petals, and the stamens. And it's called the hypanthium. And so this is kind of what happens with pomegranates. Actually, it is what happens with pomegranates. This whole structure here is like a hypanthium that comes out. Pomegranate trees don't necessarily look like this, but I also don't think they're that color, but it's quite a good model because it's different from everything else. The hypanthium is also called the floral cup. It is this little cup. I would prefer to call things the floral cup as opposed to hypanthium, but you might see that one more frequently. Meliaceae, the mahogany family, the mahogany tree. These are woody trees, predominantly they have compound leaves, so they have these big leaves with a lot of little leaflets on it. They have radially symmetrical flowers that open up. The flowers are arranged in panicles, and the fruit is often like a capsule, a drupe, or a berry. And so if you look at the mahogany sprite, it has this nice reddish wood, which it is prized for, and it gives hardwood. Mahogany, there's several species, but they're all in the genus Sweetenia. Macrophylla, there's a mahogany native to, I think, the Pacific Northwest, and the rest are like purely tropical. This thing sticking up is the fruit. That looks weird. Some people call it sky fruit. It bursts open and these little things come out. These are the seeds, and they have this little wing on them. So the mahogany seed sprite is pretty close. I mean, I think it's a great picture to demonstrate this unusual thing. This is a capsule with these winged seeds. There was some statistic that was saying up to 71 seeds can be in this thing. Pretty crazy. But mahogany is prized for its hard wood, and it's this beautiful reddish hue. And so a lot of them are kind of, on the verge of being extinct. When we look at the woods, we have the regular wood, which is just called wood in Stardew, but we can call it softwood because then hardwood exists. Now hardwood is red, and it specifically looks like it's coming from the mahogany tree, and softwood might be from your pine tree of Pinus, the genus Pinus. Now, you can see the pictures of the cross-sections of the softwood tree and the hardwood tree. The softwood tree has like more notable distance between the rings. It'll grow quicker. Often these are like coniferous evergreen trees. The wood can be treated to be just as resilient as hardwood, but generally it's cheaper. And, might not be as strong at the very beginning prior to treatment. Hardwood takes a lot longer to grow. The space between the rings is lower. The quality of the wood is higher, more expensive. Tree grows a lot slower. So for hardwoods, the tree is slow growing. Softwoods, tree grows quickly, but lower quality wood. The thing that's interesting is that oak and maple are both hardwoods. But, presumably in the game, you can't retroactively change them, and it would complicate things. So, botanically, the only true softwood in the game is the pine, and then the rest are hardwoods. Musaceae! Ethan was really excited. Ethan Full was really excited by the Musaceae. This is the banana family. The banana family of the genus Musa. These are large herbaceous perennials with a pseudostem. So all the stuff you see above the ground is fake stem. It's really just leaves that cover each other. They overlap really tightly, and then they have these really massive oblong flat blades on their leaf. They often tear laterally when the wind, which is a good evolutionary, step so that they don't break the whole leaf. And they have this really complex stem of flowers with showy bracts and makes fruits that turns into berries. The banana is a berry. Now, this is the true banana stem. If you see this thing, you would say, wow, what is that? This looks like a potato. This is called the corum. It's a flattened, compressed underground stem. Often is like a storage tissue. But the main banana leaves would come out of the middle of this here. Off the side, there would be little corms called cormels. You can propagate those and grow them. But if you dig up the banana tree, you see this. Okay, so fiddlehead fern is a forageable, and after green rain, you can get this kind of fiddlehead fern tree appearing. There's a lot of different ferns that could fit this bill, but the one that I think fit morphologically was the family Onacleaceae. I had to read my own little thing there. Onacleaceae, called the sensitive fern family. These are terrestrial ferns, so they live on the land. They have dimorphic fronds. So they'll have some leaves that are just green, they don't make spores, and they have some non-photosynthetic leaves that do make spores, but they're just like brown, and they look like they have little grape structures called sori, and the sori are full of things called sporangia, and sporangia make the spores. So this is called the ostrich fern. I love ostrich fern. First time I saw it was in SF. Couldn't really grow this in Texas. But as the leaf is growing, it unfurls. And this is the fiddlehead. You could cut it here and then, cook it and eat it. It opens up and becomes this beautiful, looks like feathers in the ground. Might have an underground stem. But then at some point, it creates this structure here that is purely reproductive. It cannot photosynthesize. This is a sporophyll. Phyll means leaf. Sporo is like spore, And so this is the leaf that makes spores. A lot of ferns, it'll be on the same one. So it'll be a thing called a troposporophyll. But in the case of the ostrich fern, this green leaf is called a trophophyll. It simply collects energy, and that's it. But yeah, this is a really beautiful plant. Oxalidaceae, the wood sorrel family. Oxalidaceae, herbaceous plants, little shrubs or tiny little plants. They have palmately compound leaves, but in Stardew we know it as a starfruit tree. The big model of the plant looks a lot like a papaya, and the fruit seems to be coming from the top, just like papaya. But, when you collect it, it looks like a star, and it does look like a star fruit. So I've included it not as a papaya, but as the wood sorrel. If you don't live in the US, you probably know it as carambola, which is a specific epithet. So avhira, which is a fun word to say, carambola. That's the scientific name of starfruit. One of the things that's really distinct about them is that they have sleep movements, or nightingnastic movements. So at night, they'll move. The leaves will change their position. The flowers have 5 petals, 5 sepals, and 10 stamens. And often they have a little dehiscent capsule, and that explodes, but starfruit's an exception to the family. Carambola is what a lot of people I know call it, yeah. When I lived in Hawaii, I lived next to a co-op, and the cheapest fruit I could get was starfruit. It was like 15 cents for one starfruit. And so I didn't like the end, so I'd cut the end off and then slice them up and then eat them. But if you eat too much, it won't be good for you because they have some like some small crystal in it, like calcium oxalate or something. So this whole family, the wood sorrel family, is named after wood sorrels. This is the kind of tree showing its members. There's our starfruit right here, but this one, this one group, oxalis. Oxalis is your wood sorrels. And so you might know oxalis, because people call them clover sometimes. But the leaf has 3 little leaflets. There's some that have 4. But at night, the leaflets close down, and then they open up. Or when they're stressed, the leaflets will close. If they get too much light, they'll close down. You remember this from the Marvel Rivals clip? Yeah. This one, Oxalis triangularis. Nice purple leaves. The flowers are pretty. Flowers turn into these little capsules that when they get mature, they explode and the seeds shoot everywhere. Fun plant. They have underground kind of tubers. Oh, poppies. Wait, I always have to read this one. Papaveraceae. Papaveraceae. I just say the poppy family. These are herbaceous plants that have a latexy sap. One of the things, they always have 4 petals, and they will always have a superior ovary, and then often the petals will fall off early. And so here in this photo here, you can see all of these are the flowers, the stems, but the petals have fallen off. There's 4 of them. The genus is Papaver. They have this latexy sap that comes off. It can be white, can be kind of yellow or reddish almost. This might have alkaloids that people want. But poppy is a universally hated gift in Stardew, except Penny likes it. But one of the reasons why it could be universally disliked is that poppies represent slumber and death and war. And so, opium coming from these plants is associated with sleeping and rest, and then also with passing away and death. And then they're associated as a memorial of war. And so perhaps Penny is unique and quirky, or she appreciates all components of life. These are the fruits before they fully dry. In the middle here, the capsule is kind of strange because the poppy head is like a rattle. It has a top where if you shake it, the seeds will fly out. There's a word for this. It's called poricidial. That's it. The poricidial cap, where it kind of dries and the seeds can come out the top. You love poppies. They're fun. I like how the buds kind of arise like this. Pinaceae, the pine family. In Stardew, we have the pine tree. These are resinous, monoecious trees with persistent, linear, or needle-like leaves. The seeds are inside of cones that are woody, and there's often 2 seeds per scale in the cone. Now, if you look at this is the Jeffrey pine, Pinus jeffreyi, and this is a whole stand of them, but you can see there's a big one and a bunch of small ones. Majestic, beautiful, glorious. The leaves are called needles, and they're arranged in bundles called fascicles. So this one has 5. Sometimes they have 1, sometimes they have 2, but these are just leaves that are specialized. Now, one of the things that's really cool is that the pine cone, these are gymnosperms, which means naked seed. So the seeds just kind of sit out, exposed, on some type of specialized leaf. So here's a picture of a pine cone, and these are 2 seeds on a scale with a little papery bract around them. So you see this kind of grayish thing? That's the papery bract. These are 2 seeds, and once this scale, which is this piece of the pine cone, opens up, they're exposed and naked. Just like gymno means naked, sperma is seed, the naked seed. Poaceae. This is our beautiful grass family. The grass family. Stardew has wheat and rice and corn and fiber. I recommend that we always associate fiber with, at least in Stardew, as a grass. Stardew has 41 distinct botanical families. So Poaceae are defined by having hollow cylindrical stems with nodes, leaves comprised of a sheath and a linear blade with a ligule. They have reduced flower structures, but they're arranged in spikelets that are turned into groups of inflorescences like panicles or spikes. And they make a little fruit called a caryopsis. So if you've eaten corn, you've eaten a caryopsis. The corn is a stem of fruits. So the corn and the cob is a bunch of little fruits. This is rice on the right. The rice, is a grass. Probably one of the most important grasses for people. And people are like, oh, well, they make flowers, but never really seen the flowers. Now you've seen it. This is wheat. This is the spike of flowers on wheat. And these are the anthers, or like the male reproductive part of the flower. Poaceae. You make sure you write that down. That's an important family. I would say the most important botanical family for all of human civilization. 1/5 of the world is covered in Poaceae. Poaceae is what gave us so much calories. We have, rice and corn and oats and wheat and sugarcane and switchgrass, which is for fiber and biofuel, and we have sorghum. The Poaceae. Without this family, we would have a lower amount of food. We'd have less fuel and fiber. It was about 20 million years ago, grasses started to dominate the world. During the Neogene period, we had the rise of grasses and the decline of forests. Grasses are super adaptable. They have deep roots to endure hot climates. They're good for the soil. They have a specialized photosynthesis process so that they can endure heat. They can be grazed down to low to the ground and then regrow. Turf grass in the US, it's not good for the environment, but they're all over the place. All types of grasses. If you remember one thing today, it's that Poaceae is probably the most important group of plants for human civilization. And other plants that might be less important, we have Polygonaceae. Polygonaceae, the buckwheat family. This is an unusual kind of family. I don't think it's very, readily encountered. But these includes rhubarb. Here is wild rhubarb on the right in Red Rock Canyon. This is what it would look like. You see these big leaves and then this interesting little stem of flowers. They have a structure that makes it easy to identify. There's only a few groups of plants that have this. This is called the ochrea. This is leaf tissue made of stipules that fuse into a sheath that surrounds the stem. So at the base of the leaf, there is this little tissue that kind of fuses around, and it's common and found throughout this family. Okay. The Rosaceae. Stardew Valley has so many Rosaceae, rose family plants. They have 5 petals, they have alternate leaves, 5 sepals, a lot of stamens, and then the fruit can be a ton of different things. It can be a drupe, can be a palm, can be an achene, can be an arrogate. We're going to run through them. Salmonberry is a Rosaceae plant. Blackberry, wild plum, strawberry, berried rose, the apricot, peach, cherry, and apple. These are all in the rose family, but the fruits are all very different. They look pretty different. We have blackberries, strawberries, and plums. They're quite different, really. But they have something in common, and the flowers are really, really hard to tell apart. The flowers almost look identical, and I would like you to help me. So what is that flower? Can you help me figure out which flower is which? Number 1. Your options are on the bottom, so in chat, please share with me what you think this is. Number 1. Is number 1 a strawberry, a peach, a cherry, apple, or rose? Okay, so in chat share, we have cherry, 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 cherry. Okay, we're gonna see. Number 1 is actually a peach. Prunus persica. Okay, let's try number 2. What is number 2? We see cherry, sakura, cherry, cherry. Number 2 is strawberry, specifically one called pink panda. This one's got to be cherry, right? We'll keep guessing cherry and you'll get it right. Number 3. What does number 3 look like to you? Cherry. Someone said cherry, strawberry, apple, apple, rose, cherry, apple, verdant, berry rose, froggy. Okay. It is the wild rose, or the fairy rose is what this would look like. You got that one. Y'all were close. And last one, Number 4, apple or cherry. Apple or cherry, that's your last two. Okay. Cherry, cherry, apple, 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 apple. I see a lot of... Oh, chapel! That's a good one. Chapel roan. This is the Asiatic apple. They all look like cherries, don't they? That's how this family seems so synergistic. If you were to get all the flowers together, you say, well, they all look the same, really. They have 5 petals and a ton of stamens. That's really how this works. One of the things is that you can often group families by flowers. The flower is one of the best indicators. The madder family, this one really matters to me. The Rubiaceae includes coffee, the coffee tree. They have opposite or whorled leaves with a thing called an interpetiolar stipule. Interpetiolar stipule is this little like weird leaf tissue right here. A stipule is derived from leaf tissue, and this is between the two petioles, so they have opposite leaves, and they have this weird little tissue here. This is my coffee tree in the back. But this is a big one in the field, and you can see they have these nice flowers. They turn into a berry, drupe, or capsule. Stardew Valley has coffee trees, and in my playthrough I've cultivated an entire farm of them, and it's a little overwhelming. The Rutaceae. I know we have some friends in here who love oranges or citrus. This is the rue family. Some people call it the citrus family. But I like to denote the common name of a family based on the genus it's based after, which is rue. This family is aromatic. A lot of the plants in this family are aromatic trees, shrubs, herbs, and the leaves often have these little translucent holes. They're glandular little holes in the leaves. So here is a picture called that we call it has a punctate leaf. So it has these little, holes in it. And in citrus, they're glandular, so they might have some type of aroma associated with them, some chemicals produced in here. And if you crush it, then you'll get some smell. The flowers are bisexual and radially symmetrical. And you'll get a hesperidium as a fruit in citrus, or in other members of the rue family, you get samaras, capsules, and berries. So sometimes the fruit isn't the best way to do it, but looking at the flowers is a good way to distinguish. Yeah, you can see these little holes. But yeah, when I was a kid, I would look at the citrus leaves and be like, something is wrong. There's like holes all over them. Perfectly normal. It's so the leaves under them get sunlight. That is indeed one evolutionary reason why this might be beneficial. The Sapindaceae, the soapberry family, includes maple. Maple was recently reclassified into this family. Sapindaceae. Now, this is a kind of a big group that has a lot of different things about them. There might be trees or vines or shrubs. But with maples, the maple seed that you see in Stardew Valley is this samara. And so on the tree, it looks like this green one. It has 2 wings. It's a type of dry fruit that has 2 wings. And then when it dries, it splits in the middle and it falls down. Some people call it helicopter fruit. The maple fruit it starts as a 2-winged samara. And so this is the dried one that you would plant. Yeah. Aceraceae is no more. Rest in peace. Solanaceae, the nightshade family. These are your nightshades, which includes the potato, tomato, eggplant, and hot pepper. I call them chilies because pepper is in the Piperaceae, a different family, but hot pepper. These are herbaceous plants. Sometimes they become big trees, actually. I've seen trees in the Solanaceae, and I've been like, wow, that's crazy. The flowers have a fused corolla, and they're often tubular, and they have 5 stamens, and they make a little berry or capsule. They have a fused corolla. The corolla is a whorl of petals. So the corolla is the word we use to describe all of the petals. In this tomato one, it has 6 petals. Sometimes you get mutations and things. Typically, the nightshade family has 5 petals. We have potato. This is a potato flower. Most people don't see potato flowers because you don't grow them to flower. Tomato, you often see that. Nice, yellow. Eggplant, and then hot pepper. Little white flowers. They have fused petals, 5 stamens. So next time you see a tomato flower, eggplant flower, You can say, wow, look at that fused corolla. And you can confuse people. The tea family, the Acaceae. This is where you get your matcha lattes. In Stardew, we have the tea sapling. At the end of each month, you can collect the new leaves from it to make green tea. This family includes the genus Camellia, which Camellia sinensis is the tea plant that you have iced tea and green tea and all this stuff. They're evergreen trees or shrubs with simple alternate leaves. Often they have a little serrated edge. You can see on this, there's a little serrated margin. And they'll have many, many stamens. So down at the bottom here is the flower. You can see they have a lot of little stamens sticking up. They typically become a woody capsule or sometimes a drupe. On the middle here, you can see that's the woody capsule. And it opens up and there would be seeds in there. But if you ever wondered what the tea plant looks like, this is what it is. And I got a photo with the flower here so you can see the cute little flower. Almost looks like Rosaceae, but it has some, distinguishing factors. We're getting near the end here. The sea lettuce family. This is the green algae. I grouped green algae into this group here. Olvaceae. The Olvaceae. These are freshwater and marine green macroalgae that are really thin. They might be like a few cells thick. Some of the reports I was reading were like, they might be 2 layers of cells thick. That's why you can see through it. But also their reproduction is interesting. They have a thing called isogamous sex, which means that they will have sex with gametes that move, that look the same. So they're not male or female. They're just like, we say positive or negative to say that they're different, that they can unite. They can reproduce sexually by fusing their motile gametes together. They can reproduce asexually. Sometimes they make gametes that look different that can fuse. That can fuse together, not to confuse people. It's a very fascinating group, from the thinness of the tissue to their reproduction. Quite remarkable. If you study algae, you realize, wow, everything is so strange. Okay, we're getting to our last 2 families here. The Vitaceae, the grape family. Grapes. Grapes notably have tendrils opposite of a leaf. And the tendril is often, if not always, derived from like stem tissue. They produce little fruits called, they're little berries, and the leaves are palmately lobed. And so, sometimes they're kind of succulent, like in section A here, this is a caduciform, this is a plant that has a succulent stem. And then you can see in B, there's the tendril, which is a key feature of this plant. These are almost always like vines, with some exceptions of the succulent species. But yeah, there are succulent plants in the grape family. Isn't that crazy? The last family, I call it Zingiberaceae, but a lot of people say Zingiberaceae. Zingiberaceae, the ginger family. Aromatic perennial herbs with a fleshy rhizome. So they have a thick, fleshy underground stem that you can see in this photo here. This is not a photograph, this is a drawing. But they're distichous. So a leaf will come up on one side, and then 180 degrees the other side, and then go up the other side, and the other side. The flowers are bilaterally symmetrical, which we call zygomorphic. And they only have one stamen that works for reproduction. And the rest are fused together into this unusual structure called labellum. So this is a ginger flower. We call it zygomorphic, which means bilaterally symmetrical. All of this like yellow thing at the bottom, this is stamen tissue that got fused together and then non-reproductive. It's called a labellum. In ginger, it's derived from sterile stamens. There's only one stamen in this flower that can make pollen. Ginger grows where it can survive. And so the rhizome is underground. The rhizome is underground, and then it tends to enjoy tropical climates. So you would find this in, maybe anywhere from subtropics in spring, summer, and fall into the tropics year-round. Abundant in Southeast Asia, there you go. You might grow it on an island, maybe Ginger Island even. One of the things that's notable about this family, the ginger family, is that they have a ligule. It's of note, they have this thin outgrowth at the junction of the leaf and the leaf stalk. Grasses have this too, but you find them in the Zingiberaceae. Now you might look at all these plants and say, well, they look pretty similar to me. Bird of paradise, big your leaves coming out of the ground. Ginger, big leaves coming out of the ground. Banana, big leaves coming out of the ground. Maranta, got some leaves coming out of the ground. What's the deal with that? Why do they look so similar? Why aren't they the same family? They should be related, right? Well, they are related, just at a different way. If you go back to our taxonomy, we were looking at family the whole time, but they're related due to their order. They're all in the same order. So this is my favorite order of plants. They're all cousins, yeah, maybe distant cousins. The Zingiberales, I say. I love this picture here. You can see at the bottom of this family tree, there's the Musaceae, the banana family, and then it branches off into the Strelitziaceae, which is bird of paradise. And you have Heliconiaceae and these other ones. There's our Zingiberaceae, and then at the end is Morantaceae. So they're in the same order. This is the order of bananas and ginger, which includes those families. There's 8 families in this order. This is the only order I care about because it's easy to comprehend. Now, orders are useful if you're trying to get bigger picture information. Now, there are some plants in Stardew Valley that we did not include because they're overly fantastical. Like this, crystal fruit. What is this? Or what is this? Winter root. Snow yam. Snow yam could be carrot, could be Apiaceae. Who knows? It could be a lot of things. The key fruit. This thing, it produces seeds that look like a little bean or a salique, but the fruit looks like a melon. So it could be a ton of different things. It looks like it's an amalgam of different things. There's the sweet jimberry. This could be a number of plants. There is a plant that when you consume it, the miracle fruit, it makes everything that is acidic taste sweet. Maybe that's what this is. And then lastly is the ancient fruit. The ancient fruit. Now, I don't know of any plant that has little blue fruits that grows up right like this. Fruit kind of first evolved in the late Jurassic or the early Cretaceous, like 130 million years ago. Prior to that, there were no fruits. And so, how ancient is the ancient fruit? Maybe these aren't fruits at all. Maybe these are some kind of fleshy cone from like a gymnosperm, but we just call them fruits the same way that we call them ginkgo fruits, but those are not fruits. So I'd love to hear your opinions and your thoughts. If you want to share them here in the chat or in the comments, I would love to see. But at the end, why does any of this matter? Why do we care about all these things? I think that Stardew Valley is a really fun way to learn about the world around us and to maybe play and create. I personally think that this is important because it gives us an opportunity to appreciate the diversity of the world around us. We might be playing a video game, but it represents our real life where the world is so rich and colorful and full. And if you look outside, you say, wow, there's so many different kinds of plants and trees and birds, and life is so diverse and wonderful that understanding them allows for us to appreciate it and be struck with wonder and awe. And I think that's what it's all about.